the higher the stakes got, the more chance I was going to fail. But I had to make sure that I was learning from those failures, and I embraced failure. It is not a dirty word. It is something that strengthened me. It's something that showed me whether I was passionate or not.
Marilyn Okoro is a former Olympian with medals also from the World Championships and World Athletics, where she represented Great Britain. She now works at Equinix, the world's leading data infrastructure company, and is also a public speaker, life coach, and mentor.
I loved running, but it was never that I set out to be an Olympian. That seed was sown at 10 years old by my first amazing coach, God rest his soul. I'm from a Nigerian home, so when you tell your mom you want to be a runner, it wasn't received very well. I was around kids that were very different to me in every aspect, financially, socioeconomic class, the homes that they came from, skin color. So I was around them and I was the same education, breathing the same oxygen, and they were my friends. So that kind of made me feel like where you start or how you start doesn't always determine what you can achieve. And not just was I around them, I was excelling around them. And I was doing very well. It's a little bit like an addiction, a lot of it. You want that rush, you want that high, you want to step on the track one more time. I was extremely burnt out, like exhausted to my core. I've never experienced anything like it, and I pride myself on my work ethic. When I was training, I would push myself. This exhaustion was different because it was emotional, it was physical, it was mental, it was spiritual. I was just so far from myself. I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, a friend. I let people ask, their questions, but I just lead and introduce myself as Marilyn Okoro from the block.
You're always an Olympian anyway, so why don't you lead with that? Why don't you put it out there right from the start? Is that for humility?
I don't think so. I think it's just because
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Oh my gosh. I sound like a busybody with all that list of hats I'm wearing. No, it's a real pleasure.
I was curious because you had an identity previously in sports, and obviously now you've got a different life that you're leading and transitioning into. So what do you use? How do you introduce yourself nowadays when people reach out to you to have a conversation?
That is such a good question because identity is such a key piece of the athlete journey. And I've had various emotions towards, I'm an athlete, I'm a former athlete, always an Olympian though. You're never a former Olympian. But I just lead with my name, I think there was a big period towards the end of my career where my coach just kept calling me that athlete or my athlete. And, I lead with my name. There's power in your name. And then I will kind of say what I'm doing after that. To be honest, I probably don't mention the sport. And if I'm with someone, they'll be like, oh, she's being modest. She's an Olympian. But I am very proud of it, but it's one hat that I wear. And so, I guess the thing that I'm most proud about is that I'm a child of God. I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend. So yeah, I let people ask, their questions, but I just lead and introduce myself as Marilyn Okoro from the block.
I'm not gonna lie though. If, like you said, you're always an Olympian anyway. So why don't you lead with that? Why don't you put it out there right from the start? Is that for humility or?
I don't think so. I think it's just because I loved running, but it was never that I set out to be an Olympian. That seed was sown at 10 years old by my first amazing coach, God rest his soul. But it wasn't really, I'm from a Nigerian home. So when you tell your mom you want to be a runner, that it wasn't received very well, And I think maybe it would be different if I was the doctor or the lawyer. I don't know, but not that I'm very proud. Like track and field was an incredible journey, 20 years long of professional sport. But I don't know, it's like I don't walk around with my medal all the time. It's just, I think also I underestimate as well, because people always go, oh, you used to run. Did you ever go to the Olympics? And then you go, yeah, twice. And then like, wow. For me, the Olympics I'm always chasing excellence. So that was where I needed to get to. So for me, I kind of take it as, of course I went to the Olympics. I decided to choose sport as my career. What's the highest thing I could do was get to the Olympics. So For me, I think I just take it as it's given, which I need to reassess because it's not, it's a great thing to represent your country at any championships, let alone twice at the
So
Olympics.
You said you've been in sports since you were 10. Before that, so I think before you attended like Abbott Healing and stuff like that, was there a different path that you were potentially thinking about going down?
So, yeah, there were two. My parents always, my mum, let me say, she was very, very influential in my identity and who I was supposed to be. So she would always tell me, medicine, medicine, medicine. You're going to Oxford, you're going to Cambridge, medicine. So I had that drummed into my head. I'm from a medical family. My dad's a doctor, my mom was a nurse. I think I didn't like science or anything like that from an early age, and I was very, very creative in my head. I didn't spend a lot of time with my peers. I spent a lot of time on my own, so I feel like I was very creative. So in my head, I was going to be a singer for Michael Jackson. God mercy. Um, and I think that was just influenced by living in Wembley, just kind of seeing all the musical concerts. I love singing. I love music. It brings me joy. Um, but then when I was, obviously when I went to secondary school, I was thinking, okay, well, I need to get real. And mum wants me to be a doctor. Maybe I'll be a lawyer. Maybe that'll, subdue her because I'm not doing science. And I actually was quite interested in kind of international relations, defending people, talking. So yeah, there was I would say though, I would think of just a different career like every month and be like, why not? I could do that. I could do that. So I always had that mindset of whatever I want to do, I can do and I can be.
So would you say you've always been a confident person then in everything that you've done, or is that something that developed over time?
I would say I always had an audacious boldness because I think when you grow up hearing no a lot, it can go one of two ways. You either want to prove people wrong and turn that no into a yes, or it can, break you down and, instill a lot of fear and doubt. But yeah, I think from a young age, I was just very bold in seeing what was out there and in my ability to do things. And I think that was because I wasn't mollycoddled. I didn't have a lot of affirmation. So somehow I was able to just, pick myself up, talk to myself in a certain way. And I always say my early years were fueled by the word no. Definitely. I was like, you tell me no, I'm going to show you why I can.
Hmm. Where was the not coming from?
Oh, society. My mom, she loved to say no all the time. But I would say, growing up in Stonebridge, there's so much talent all around, but the opportunity wasn't the same as it is now. A lot of hardship. Grew up with not a lot of money. So a lot of time my mum's no's were not because she didn't want to, it's because she couldn't. And I think there was just a lot of things that people just would assume that would be my portion. And I was like, well, why? And I think a big thing for me was when I went to Abbots Hill, which was a little boarding school in Hertfordshire. I was around kids that were very different to me in every aspect, financially, socioeconomic class, um, the homes that they came from, skin color. So I was around them and I was getting the same education, breathing the same oxygen, and they were my friends. So that kind of made me feel like, it doesn't, where you start or how you start doesn't always determine what you can achieve. And not just was I around them, I was excelling around them and I was doing very well. And then obviously when running came into it, this set me apart. So yeah, definitely running and sport in general, because running wasn't actually my first sport, definitely kind of heightened that confidence. Again, having someone like George, someone who believes in you, probably more than you even believe in yourself, to instill um, extra layer of confidence and help you, teach you and show you the way. So yeah, those first formative years of high school were very big, and the foundations that I really lent upon in my athletics career.
So when then go back into your athletics career, you're starting to build, you're starting to compete, you're starting to win competitions, you're making it now into a full-time career. How did you stay disciplined in that space? Because it's never a given. And I think when you talk to athletes, people are like, oh, it's discipline. That's just standing. Like, no, it's not. Like, to stay disciplined, it is not easy. And there are so many different things coming at you from the external environment and the internal environment. So that discipline is actually something that you have to continually hone and remind yourself of. So I'm curious for you, how did you kind of do that?
Now you're talking my language. I love the word discipline. And I'm trying to work out if I just was disciplined or if sport disciplined me. um, and as you know, my faith is a big pillar of my life. It is my life, and discipline is required there as well. I am extremely driven, and I think a lot of it was circumstantial. And I was a big dreamer, so I knew I had these big, lofty goals, and I needed to achieve them. There was non-negotiables. So I think that drive really kind of is the foundation of my discipline, because I didn't always like what I had to do, but I was going to get it done because I knew what I was striving for. So I often talk about champion mindset, which is everyone's got it, but can you access it? Are you willing to do what it takes to achieve those goals that we all write down on 31st, January 1st? Now, what are we? The 9th of January. Are we still reading our Bible every day? Are we still going out for that jog? It's the discipline, and, the faith and the belief you have in yourself to achieve those goals, which is why when you're goal setting, they need to be realistic, and you need to think about what is actually the plan. Do you trust yourself enough to see it through? And I can see a stark difference. Now I'm retired in terms of sport and running. The discipline is lacking, but it was there when I needed to get to the Olympics, because that was the goal. The big picture, I always had this big vision, and then I would reverse engineer. And so those were my steps to get there. And because I always had that big picture, it kept me moving forward. And I had to learn quickly that sometimes you have this beautiful linear plan, but it's not going to always go that way. And actually, the achievement and the success now is your ability to, one, spot when you are going the wrong direction, and how quickly you can pivot, how quickly you adapt to setbacks and can overcome them. And so I think my journey is definitely a testament of being able to bounce back real quick. If I'm going to fail, that's okay. We'll fail fast, we'll fail forward, but we're going to keep it pushing because eyes on the prize. And so that feeds my discipline. And I think I'm fueled by it. I'm fueled by, can I achieve that goal? And I think that was my whole athletics career. I just want to see how far can I go? And especially when people kept telling me I couldn't, it's like, okay, let's watch this one then. But discipline, I am, anyone that knows me, they just know I'm going to drum it into them. It's just necessary. It's actually a skill. I'm going to put it down as a skill now, because a lot of people are just not disciplined.
Because that's when you said earlier on, like the champion mindset, everyone has it. And I was like, does everyone actually have it though?
Mm-hmm.
You think so?
Whether you use it or not is another, everyone has it. It's accessible to everyone. If you are living and breathing on this earth and you've got a mind, it's whether you're willing to go there to make it the champion mindset.
So why do most people don't?
Because it's hard. Because it requires you to feel pain, which is growth. It takes something. There's a sacrifice. And some people just can't be bothered. And that's okay. If you can't be bothered, that's okay too. But, I love to encourage people. I love to inspire people. And for me, if I can help someone access even just 10%, 5% of that champion mindset, I'm happy.
Do you have like mental models, or do you have unique ways that you help people kind of access that? Because I think, especially when we think about where we are now, new start the new year and all that kind of stuff. This would probably something great for someone to be able to tap into. Like, actually, you know what? If I want to have a great 2025, how do I really access my champion mindset?
Yes, I always start with, so if I'm working with someone, coaching or mentoring, I want to get to know them. So I want to know what makes them tick and just try to identify what is the thing that's holding them back. It's usually rooted in fear, and that's come from some sort of experience or trauma. So just learning, and then one of my techniques is kind of, and anyone that works with me, they just hate this about me, but they love it really. I'm going to put you where you don't want to be. Somehow we're going to get there. And it's not going to be, you're not going to know. You're just going to suddenly realize you're doing it. And that's one of my favorite things I used to watch with, I didn't coach sport much, but conditioning and things. And people would always tell me what they can't do. So my goal would be to show them that they can. And I'm not going to say, okay, so you told me you can't do 20 burpees. I'm going to say, okay, do 20 burpees. I'm going to coach them and guide them. And when they've done 30 burpees, they're going to be like, I started this journey thinking I can't, or saying I can't do 20 burpees. And one of the things is that negative chat is the thing that I try and quieten, because you don't know that you can't do something yet until you've tried, if you haven't tried. If you have tried and you can't do it, that's okay. We're going to learn how to do it better next time. So I'm a big one on what's happening between your ears, what you're telling yourself, that self-talk. Because I think for my sporting days, that was the thing that really kept me going, because when all the chatter outside around you is negative, you have to be able to keep that voice on the inside keeping you going, keep it positive, and that's ultimate focus as well, not being dragged into all the distractions, because hey, we live in a world where there's distractions galore, but whoever's going to achieve what it is they set out is that person that's going to be able to quieten the noise and see that vision and chase it regardless of all of that.
That's it's a powerful outlook. That move, that shift that you take people kind of through. But that statement you made right now around just being able to quieten the noise, I think is such a critical one.
Yeah.
Because learning to actually even know and understand your own voice is hard in itself. And then learn to then listen to that voice and then step into that voice as well is then that whole different level and layer. So listen to you kind of describe of how that's one of the things that kind of drove you, helped you to do that. It's brilliant. I guess I'm also curious. How did you not get caught up in the distractions? And your distractions were like funding and different things like that, and all different things that happen with trainers and everything else. Like, how did you kind of keep the main thing while all of that was still happening around you, which was important?
Well, let me tell you something. I didn't always get it right. That's why I can speak today, because one thing about my life was there was distractions. And the thing about distractions, they're sometimes just like the ordinary things. I think sometimes we are expecting these big old boulders to, like, these obstacles, and they came too. But the dangerous thing about distractions is not recognizing them or not being prepared for them because you don't recognize them, or understanding how you get distracted, and then suddenly you're in procrastination, and then suddenly you're demotivated, and then suddenly you're not doing anything and you're unproductive. So I think for me, I was just understanding how I ticked, what I was passionate about, what I needed to get something done, and making sure that if something was important to me, that was first of all how I would prioritize. Prioritization is so important. I'm someone that, listen, everything I'm doing now is of value, is important. So then again, that's another layer of, okay, how do we prioritize when everything's important? And so I kind of reduce it to what is serving me, and what is going to have the biggest impact, and how can I do it with excellence and do it well? Because one thing I do know about myself is if I'm not going to do it well, I don't want to just put my name to nonsense or let anybody down. So making sure I have, or if I need to delegate, if I need to have someone to come and support me to do something, whatever I do, I want to do it with excellence. Whatever I'm chasing, I chase with excellence. And so that passion and that motivation to make sure my champion mindset is activated and involved. I have to make sure that it's there. Um, but yeah, those are some nuggets.
What do you do when you are then faced with failure? And for someone like you who is very driven, very, I want to put everyone around me wrong, when you do end up failing, how do you then rebound from that? Because that can be debilitating sometimes.
Oh yeah. Sport is a good one for humbling you in that respect. You know, you failed every day, mate. Like you literally just kept failing until you didn't. And even one annoying thing about athletes and the journey is that even when you ran a PB, you would just say all the things that you didn't do right in the race instead of just being like, "Hey, I was victorious today. I was the best one out there." You're like, yeah, but you know what? Because you're always chasing the next. But my two critical friends, I always say, were fear and failure because they fueled me through my track career. Through the 800 meters is no no mean feat. So and I didn't always get it right, but I would keep trying, keep picking myself up until I mastered my race. And it was only through failure that I was able to correct what I wasn't naturally doing well or what I hadn't trained enough to cover. So to get stronger, to get faster, that's, you know, kind of what you do in your younger years. Now, when everyone's running sub 2 minutes, when everyone's running, you know, sub 158, how are you going to differentiate yourself? So, you know, the higher the stakes got, the more, you know, the more chance I was going to fail. But I had to make sure that I was learning from those failures and I embraced failure. It is not a dirty word. It is something that strengthened me. It's something that showed me whether I was passionate or not. Because sometimes when I failed at something and I didn't care, probably should have been doing it anyway. Because I didn't, if I failed and I wasn't passionate about it, I probably didn't do what I needed to do to prepare and it probably wasn't important. So, um, but yeah, no, it's something that I look on as a help. It absolutely helps me prioritize and helps me get better for next time. So I think I said it earlier, fail fast, fail forward and keep it moving.
It sounds like sounds like there's a measure for you as well, in a way where you critically analyze what failure looks like. It's actually, was I intentional about this and was I purposeful about this or was I not? And even that distinction and breaking it down is a different way. Because I guess back to your championship mindset of looking at, okay, maybe I shouldn't have been doing that actually, and that's why it didn't work out the way it worked out, as opposed to all those different elements that surround us sometimes.
Absolutely. I think a lot of the time we always, when we're setting goals and we want to do something, people always ask the question, okay, so what does success look like? Very rarely do they actually say, okay, what does failure look like? And I was someone that I needed to know what the worst case scenario was before I did something. And then, to be honest, it wasn't that bad because there's always tomorrow, which is another opportunity to go again. So I think with that kind of baseline mindset, I was never afraid. I was like, you know what, I'm going to try because the only ultimate failure is when you don't do something at all. So,
What was it like making the decision to walk away from your career after 20 plus years doing this, breathing it, getting injured, getting back up again, moving countries, all the different things you've been through? Like, what was that like for you?
all the things. And thank you very much for saying walking away because a lot of people say quit athletics. And that's a little pet peeve of mine because I don't think you can be in something 20 years and then call that quitting. But I know it's a figure of speech, but I did walk away, which is a really nice way to think about it now. It was hard and it didn't happen overnight. I think I wanted to walk away many, many years before I actually did. I think it took a lot of courage. Yes, when we're talking about those distractions and those noises, there was many, especially in the latter 6 years of my career. 2012 was a really difficult, defining year. But it was also the catalyst to why I moved to the US. So I'm grateful for it, as painful as it was. Um, but you never really recognize the beginning of the end. And I think that's one of the things. I'm an athlete mentor now, and I really encourage athletes to consider what the end could look like, even if you're nowhere near it, because I think the shock of suddenly thinking, what am I going to do next? When you've been in something so long, it didn't need to be as hard as it was. I should have prepared a little bit earlier. I should have had people having these conversations with me way before I got to crisis point. Um, when I actually got to the moment of knowing in my spirit, in myself, that this was what I no longer wanted to do day in, day out. Why? I wasn't motivated. I wasn't willing to do what it took to achieve any of the goals I was writing down. I wasn't all in. I no longer had the motivation, the drive. I didn't have the community around me. I couldn't fund myself. It was making me miserable. So, in that respect, I was actually okay, it's time. But mentally, I was like worried about, what's this person going to say? I've got unresolved business on the track. I want one more. It's a little bit like an addiction, a lot of bit like addiction. You want that rush, you want that high, you want to step on the track one more time. But the problem is, you're going to do it one more time, then there's going to be another time and another time. And I just had no more energy for that race anymore, that chase. I was extremely burnt out, like exhausted to my core. I've never experienced anything like it, and I pride myself on my work ethic. When I was training, I would push myself. This exhaustion was different because it was emotional, it was physical, it was mental, it was spiritual. I was just so far from myself. And one thing as an athlete, you're very in tune with yourself. And when I felt very detached from myself, it's a scary place to be. My mental health wasn't doing well. I wasn't aligned with God, and that's a huge part of my life. So absolutely, we were shutting that door and walking away. And the relief I felt once I, made that decision. I wrote a letter to my sport, which was published in our magazine, Athletics Weekly, which is like the family mag. And I think when I received the responses from the community, it was a nice confirmation that, yeah, it was time. And then grieving began.
Do you remember what was going on for you to experience the worst burnout ever like that?
Wow. So, yeah, I think it was just prolonged, um, enduring kind of a lot of like negativity. I was not in the healthiest of environments. I was not around the healthiest of people supporting me. I had a lot of lack. And when I talk often very openly about being in episodes of depression. I think when you're depressed, you're depleted and you're lacking a lot. Um, I had pushed my body like nobody's business. So even in my physically, I was depleted. And I remember having physiological tests, and they were like, I don't really know how you're running right now these times, but just be conscious, because at some point you won't be able to run anymore, and you want to stop on your terms. Did I listen? Not really. Um, I was lacking good counsel. I didn't have people that from the outside looking in really knew what Marilyn looked like when she was struggling. One thing about me is, I'm gonna give you that poker face. I'm gonna keep smiling. I smile through the pain. And I didn't have that because the people around me weren't going to be patient with my pain. They were the people, when I showed any sign of weakness, would just tell me, oh, you're a jelly donut, get on with it. Like, you don't want it bad enough. And so when you're going through things, you need people around you that are going to be patient with your pain and allow you to be you and support you how you need to be supported. But I was in an environment where I was serving a lot of others, so they needed me to just perform. They needed me to just get on with it. Um, so it was just a prolonged period of that, a prolonged period of fight or flight. And, you don't know how strong you are until you come out of it, really. And you realize how much you were enduring. And so I always say, people go, were you injured? Why did you just stop? Because people are used to me coming bouncing back from injury after injury, performing. I ran on a lot of injuries. But I think the biggest one was when my mind just, I say my brain broke. It just, my adrenal glands shut off because I think the body had enough. And the body will always win. The body knows what you need, and it was in shutdown mode to protect me from myself. So yeah, I just stopped, and it was like, I remember one of my worst injuries was pinging my hamstring off the bone, and it was just this coil that kind of wound down, and then eventually I ground to a halt. Emotionally and physically, that's what happened, and it was during COVID time. So I was nice and isolated, and I just stopped, and I just couldn't get up and go anymore, and I didn't want to, and I wasn't going to force myself. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. I think it's a powerful lesson for people to recognize that there are times when you can push through, and there are times where you need to listen. And learning that distinction is really important, because you end up pushing through in space and places where you shouldn't be, where you just need to kind of just fall back and let it be.
Oh, you nailed it. Pushing in spaces where you shouldn't be. And the sad thing is you'll be the casualty. And for someone that was so self-aware, that's when I realized there was a problem, because I actually was pushing beyond my limits. And so then that became a problem, because I knew it was like, I'm chasing something else now. This is about something else. This isn't about just sport. And it was true. It was to do with a lot of, I think, emotional pain that I was dealing with. And the focus for running was no longer a healthy goal. It was very negative, and it was quite toxic. So therefore it wasn't serving the same purpose as when I started as a 10-year-old, and I was, dreaming big. And so anytime you're in an environment like that, you need to get out of it.
So when you then make that choice, make that decision, you're now stepping into a new lease of life. How do you decide what to do next? Because with like transferable skills, Olympian to corporate, like what's going on there?
Oh
How
my
did you make
gosh.
that distinction for you?
That couple of words, transferable skills. Ha! We hear it all the time, and this is what I love when I'm mentoring my athletes. It's like, we're going to learn what yours are, because people just throw it at you and it sounds amazing, and you go in and I've got all these transferable skills, and then you get your first interview and they're like, okay, what are they? Because first of all, that's if you get an interview, because your CV is just full of athletics and sporting accolades. So I had a fantastic mentor when I was, you know, thinking about my next, because I was someone, told you about my mama at the beginning, right? So I was an overachiever, and there was lots that I wanted to do. There was lots of strings to my bow. But how do you top a 20-year career in track and field? How do you top an Olympic bronze medal? How do you top flying across the globe, you know, taking planes more than you take trains? So it was like, what's going to actually satisfy me? What do I actually want to do? Do I know? I don't actually think I know, because I always thought I was going to do this for as long as I wanted. And then I was going to, sit on the BBC couch and then do all this media work. And you just think these things are going to come, because that's kind of how it happened in sport. And then you realize the bubble bursts and you ain't running. So no one's checking for you, hun. And you also just feel, I didn't finish on my terms. So my champion mindset was working against me a little bit and telling me, like, you failed the mission. And I felt this overwhelming feeling of being a failure, to the point, like, you're speaking to people and they just think you're like, what is wrong with this person? And I remember, like, a therapist saying, how can that be truth? Look at everything you've achieved. And then I realized my gratitude was not where it needed to be. And my reality was very distorted, because I'd done something with my body, with my mind, with my life that only a handful of people do. But because I was in that bubble and all I saw was people achieving. And also, I think also I just was very focused on what it was I wanted to achieve out of life. And if I was very extreme. If I didn't achieve it, it was like everything else is like you failed. So I had to reframe that very quickly. And then I had to find out what was life going to look like without running? Because I don't want to run. So that was first and foremost. I don't want to run anymore. I have chosen the same way I chose to run. I have now chosen not to run. So what is my next race? What is my next season looking like? Um, I just led with the things that I'm passionate about. I love people. I love talking. I love problem solving. So now we're pulling out the skills. What has sport taught me? What are all the lessons that I've learned? And I would start with my bad races and then my great races. It actually had to be very reflective. I never used to watch my races much, but I was to go back and watch them. And then this sense of pride just came over me because I was like, man, you how you saw yourself and what you were doing wasn't aligned. I think that's one of the things I regret is that I wasn't in the moment enough and I did not give myself enough grace and kindness because I did some crazy things without just assuming that was just normal. And that was my drive, but it's important to take stock and appreciate. Um, but I had to work through a lot of stuff to sort of be in this kind of bold space again. I feel like the boldness I carry now is where I started, and along the way, it kind of got tampered with, a bit battered and bruised. And if you raced well, then, yeah, I'm great. If you didn't do so well, but towards the end, when I had a prolonged period of not hitting the mark, it did take its toll on me. And so that's why I was in that low place. But I was like, no, I get an opportunity. I'm not even going to say reinvent myself. I'm going to extend myself into my next. And so then that became exciting. Um, and, champion mindset kicked in. I can achieve anything I set my mind to, as long as I'm willing to do what it takes. And I had a rant on LinkedIn. This is how I actually landed my role. I used to do that a lot. Yeah, because I was like, this LinkedIn place, this network heaven. I love networking. I love meeting people. I love talking to people. You never know where the next collab is going to come from, where the next opportunity. And I was, kind of dabbling with the speaking and people were picking up what I was putting down. And I was like, okay, maybe I can get paid for this. But I was doing a lot for free because it was actually cathartic and it was actually helping me heal and picking me back up. So one of my rants was during a 15-week search for a job. And I was just, in every search engine and, my mentor was helping me. I was like, I've got this shiny new CV. And basically it was just like, nope, 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 rejection. I started a role for 2 weeks as an EA and I was like, EAs are superheroes, don't get me wrong. But I was like, this is not for me because all this admin here. So I was learning what I didn't really enjoy. I know you can't get away from it, life admin, etc. I was like, not as my full-time role. And then I put on there, how am I supposed to get experience on top of all the experience I have if no one's willing to give me an opportunity to gain more experience? I think I need to go and find that post and athlete career transition. There are a couple of ex-international rugby players that set up their company. They've been going probably like 14, 15 years now in the game, supporting athletes, matching them with companies. And they were like, Maz, we think we've got something for you. I don't even think I let them finish. I was just like, boom, what do I need to do? I'm there. Whatever it is, I've got this. I've never heard of Equinix before. I was like, Equinix, Equinox, whatever it is, I'm there. They're going to love me. The audacious confidence is there. I knew it was in HR. I knew it was university, something, something. And then I prepared for the interview and I was like, okay, data infrastructure, never heard of this in my life, but all I need to do is attract people to this company. So I went through the process, very quick process, happened in a week. I did all the ACT probe videos. You send off your video, you tell them about yourself, they ask you prompt questions. Loved that process. It was tailored to me. And then I met my first hiring manager, which, as far as I was concerned, that's my coach. So I was associating it with, I had some very interesting, spicy coaches in athletics. So I was getting ready for corporate world, all I'd heard of corporate. And I had an absolute angel in front of me. She was a serious destiny helper. She loved sport. She loved that I came from the sporting background. So I knew she was sold and bought into that. But she really was invested in who I was as a person. She wanted to know what made me tick. She wanted to know how I was going to thrive. And she was willing to support me through that. So that reminded me of George, my very first coach. And I was like, okay, I'm going to feel safe here because that's what I was looking for. I was looking for an environment to feel safe again. And then, yeah, she knew very early on that my goal was to progress. I didn't just want another job. I wanted to make my way up to something, but also I had an athlete mindset. So how quickly we do that is not probably in line with your usual
Right.
timelines. So she was also very good at keeping me grounded. She was also very good at letting me make mistakes and helping me correct them in a gracious and loving way, not embarrassing me, not gaslighting me. She would never put me on the spot. And so now in my next role, it's really interesting seeing, when you leave something, you can look back and realize, why you were successful in that last role and how it landed me the role that I have now. I've pivoted from the program lead of the internship program here at Equinix, which I would run 12 weeks every summer. And I'm now an account exec in the public sector sales team, which again, it's relationship building, it's problem solving, it's listening. But the technicalities and all that stuff, I'm seeing them as distractions for now because I'm going to learn that. And I'm having to remind myself that my core skills that I bring to this role, they will shine through, once I get through this jungle of onboarding. But it's been 3 months in, I'm feeling better. But again, I just lean on what I know, and that's, champion mindset, lots of listening, failing fast, failing forward, and I'm in a great, safe environment. So we run with it.
I think there's something you said earlier on around when you look at towards the end of your career, you were in a space where you were not safe. You were in an environment you were not safe. You had people around you who basically went out there to actually support you more. They wanted something from you if you couldn't deliver the kind of pushing. I think there are times when in life, when we're not getting something from a particular area, we move on, but we don't intentionally say, okay, I need X from my new space, especially when you go from two completely different careers. But I like the fact that you're able to be like, no, even in my new career, one thing I know for sure that I want to have is safety. And you found that, and that makes you feel a lot more grounded to be able to really step into your own and figure out the other things that you still don't know. But being able to like, no, I know what it is I actually need, and that has to come first. And I think there are times people just lead with other bits and pieces. Oh, I got to get paid. I got to do X, Y, Z. And they forget, like, no, what was critical to me was that safety. And I need to find that. So I love when you said that. No, I've got safety in my environment. That's great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think, yeah, I was feeling very unsafe, and definitely, I mentioned financial security, but I was chasing finances in sport. So I knew I couldn't just chase finance alone. Um, and definitely the psychological safety because the arena of sport is wild. It's a jungle. It's a battleground. You've got battle of the mind, but you've also got the battle of everything going on around you. And so I was very, very sure that the next environment that I was in, I needed to feel safe, that I could show up as myself, that I had people that wanted to sew into me because I know I'm a giver. I know I'm going to bring, my A game to the table. And everyone wants to feel valued. Everyone wants to know that they are, a valued member of the team, of the community. So, yeah, I was very intentional with wherever I landed, and that's why, not that I didn't feel psychological safety in the role that I did for just 2 weeks, but I knew there wasn't enough structure around me to support me to thrive. So we cut that real quick and we kept on looking for the next place.
Your, let me call it outspokenness, which you've had all the way throughout your career. Do you see it as a superpower?
Ooh, I'm gonna add that to the list. Yeah, so my nickname's Maverick Maz. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
My outspokenness, it's quite hilarious because actually I grew up not really using my voice. In fact, my voice was very muted. So I just think it's ironic that, you know, I love to speak now and I am outspoken. I think is also, a time and a place and knowing when to be outspoken. And for me, whenever there's injustice, whenever someone else is feeling that they can't use their voice and they need to be heard, definitely that's when my voice comes out loudest. But I think when it started to grow through sport, there were just some things that I was like, this is not okay. This is my reality, and no one can tell me otherwise. And these things need to change. And until someone somewhere has this conversation, debate, whatever it is, brings it out there, brings it to light, nothing will change. And there was some mega things going on in the environment of sports is why I'm so passionate about safeguarding and athlete welfare and welfare of everyone. Safeguarding is everyone's responsibility and everyone's involved. But I couldn't hold it in. And it's hard at first because when you are going against the grain, people don't know how to take it. But I took strength from the people that it was supporting, even if it was just me. But often I was saying things that everyone else wanted to say, just didn't have the courage to. And that was okay for me. So maybe the lawyer in me was coming out. There we go. It's true. The advocate. It's got me in trouble though. I had to learn.
Yeah, I was about to say that. How do you know when the right time is to speak? And I'm sure you've not always got it right. Like, so how have you learned over the years to be like, okay, this is great, this is not great. Let me just fall back, or let me actually speak up here.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to limit it to the right time. I think it's the how you say it and who you say it to. And and I think, some of my mistakes was just venting on Twitter because I had to remember, whatever you put out there is out there forever, even if you delete it, my friend, it's out there. And the media picks it up and young minds pick it up and people that don't have context pick it up and run with it. So for me, definitely I learned that through sport because, especially when you spend a lot of time by yourself, you think your platform is just where you start talking to everyone, and not everyone needs to know because not everyone has your best intentions at heart. Um, but also, I think, one thing about speaking up is to effect change. And therefore, you need to talk to someone that can help you drive that change. And so that's why I became passionate about governance in the boardroom and realizing that in my sport, people that were making very, very key influential decisions did not have a Scooby Doo about me and anyone that looked like me. And a lot of people in my sport looked like me and were from my background, and we had the same experiences or similar experiences that the people making decisions could not relate to one iota. And so I began that very difficult journey to try and see if I could get a seat at the table. And, it wasn't received well at first, but we carried on and I kept plugging away. And then I did. And I, you know, realized why my experiences were the way they were. Um, I'm proud to say it's changing. I mean, the politics of sport, it's a big cake. And, we can only chip away and take slices and try and change the culture, but it happens with conversations. But I'm now in spaces where I can have these conversations without having to necessarily shout my brains off. I've got a position of influence. People want to hear what I have to say. People trust that I will deliver, information and help effect change. And it doesn't happen overnight. And I have a new understanding and lens on the sporting landscape and perhaps why I encountered some of the difficulties that I have. And I realize it's bigger than me, it's bigger than the federation sometimes, but that's the power of sport as well. So yeah, I learned to how to use my voice. It's a tool, a very powerful tool that can do a lot of good, but can also do a lot of damage. And so once you know how to use it effectively, um, yeah, it's key. So I love that I found my voice, and I love that I learned to use it correctly.
You mentioned your faith a number of times. How important has your faith been just to your journey all the way throughout in the ups and the downs and everything else that you've navigated?
My faith is the reason I've been on this journey. You know, I start saying um, about having audacious confidence. What I realized is I had faith from a young age. I just didn't know it at the time. I always knew God in some capacity, but I didn't have a relationship with Him. And so, very grateful and in awe of just how mindful He is of little old me and His love for me. There were a lot of things that I lacked as a child, and I realized that He covered all of that. And the journey that I've been on, and just the meandering and all the hardships, all the setbacks, the ability to bounce back was because I had hope in God. So it is my everything. I am a very proud minister of the gospel. I just, love to talk about him wherever I go. I love to talk to people that don't know him, that do know him. I love to encourage people simply by sharing my testimony. And that is the reality of it. I remember I used to have speaking gigs at schools, and they'd be like, "Oh, can you not mention anything about faith? We don't want to upset anyone." And I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of stifling a big chunk of my story." But now, people know me for that. I think, I talk a lot about branding. That's the best brand I could ever be associated with. And actually, it's been great. I've done programs, leading with faith and sport. We've seen a massive move of athletes talking about how their strength is in Christ. And, I think when you are trying to do audacious things, there is a fuel, there is something that it is down to. And for me, it was my faith in God, because there were a lot of arenas that I would have crumbled in if I didn't have that solid foundation and firm faith.
Right. It's so back to your point around being a trailblazer in this space. I think there's something powerful around seeing people lean into the source and talk about it very, very openly and unashamedly. Because there was a period it felt like where it kind of, for want of better words, kind of hidden. Like, you got to face, you can't talk about it. You gotta. And I was like, that's weird, especially being in the UK, where we're supposed to be a Christian culture, Christian environment. But like you said, I've seen a lot, especially with some football stars coming out and talking about their faith.
Ballers in Christ.
All that, so all of that. So it's all good to kind of see, and it's great to have you out there again, be like, no, this was critical to who I am and who I've become. It's all been through having that faith, that relation.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Christ is the reason. And, he gave me a platform. And so I love to be able to, use it. And I think the best form of evangelism is your character and how you live your lifestyle. And, throughout sport, one of my goals was always to be a real and a relatable role model, because I have a very, very ordinary story. I started from the humblest of beginnings, and I never forget that. My family is still in Northwest London. I now live in Croydon. I'm very grounded to the things that make me who I am. And yeah, it's just important that people know that tough times are here, but you can get through them iron sharpens iron. And when you are connected to your source, your power source, and for me, God is my source of strength and everything, you can overcome anything. And it's actually, it makes you stronger, and shows you and or directs you in the way that you should go. So yeah.
And so, last two questions to you as we wrap up this conversation. Singing. You have sang in bands and all different bits and pieces. Is that something that you're going to pursue now that you got a bit more time in your hands, or is that just a hobby?
So my goal is to like retire and then go on, the over whatever category for X Factor. I don't even think that's on anymore. But Strictly, but that was my plan. God had a whole other plan, and I loved how singing was woven into my athletics career. Started at uni, really. I mean, I sang at school a lot in choirs, but I never really classed myself a singer. Uni, I joined the gospel choir, but again, it was just kind of a bit of fun. And then a good friend of mine, Ben, tricked me into singing at the university ball. So I joined his jazz band. They had like this 12-piece band and no vocalist. So he was like, we just got a little gig in Bath, and it ended up being the uni ball, and I loved it. Um, and that's when me and Nina Simone became besties. And then I became a random wedding singer. UK Athletics or some, England Athletics would ask me to sing at some after dinner opportunities. And so music was always a source of joy. And then when I was retiring, the beginning of the end, I stopped singing because I was so sad. I was so low. I couldn't access that place that I needed to sing. So it wasn't until I joined the ministry that I'm at now, RPF, Redeemed Pillar of Fire, that our pastor just said, you should be singing, you, find your voice again and sing, and whatever you sing, glorify God with it. And the moment I started doing that again, just the dam burst, and I just love to sing again. So I sing in church every week. It's a different kind of singing, it's more ministering, and it's, you know, I sing at home a lot. I sing wherever I go. And actually, that's what I used to do in the core room when I was racing. I used to be singing. I'd have a melody to keep me upbeat, keep me joyful, and that used to really annoy my competitors. But yeah, that's my superpower. I'm gonna sing. I'm gonna sing to the win. But yeah, no, now it's sometimes you can't even pray, but I'll start singing a song. God will give me a melody, and I'm more of a praise girl as well, which is unusual. Everyone's like, I'm just a worship, the slow. But I do love there's things that happen when you praise and when you release those warrior angels. So, but I just love to glorify God, and that's a gift He's given me. So I will use it.
And how do you define the leadership?
Amazing question. Leadership is your ability to serve others whilst taking them on a journey with you, helping them execute a vision that you've set out, um, with a lot of compassion. The best leaders that I know are servant leaders. They're compassionate leaders, but they're also driven, and they have a vision. They're able to see the vision and bring everyone along with them. And so that's kind of how I define leadership. And you don't have to do everything, because if you have the right people around you and you nurture them, it might require some coaching, guidance. You can achieve incredible things. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, and you just take people on that journey with you.
Love that breakdown. And it's been fascinating just listening to your journey, like the determination, the discipline, the mindset, the mentality that you have, but then tethered with the self-reflection and self-awareness. I think it's something that we don't get to hear a lot from people, from athletes in particular, around all you see is what you're doing, I guess, on track rather than the human. And to actually listen to your journey, the kind of way that you broke it down, for me, it's brilliant. But two, just to be able to hear how even like having that champion's mindset can be good and bad. And there are times where you need to recognize when it's working for you, when it's working against you, and the things need to kind of change and pivot and all those different elements and stuff like that. It's been great. You know, a lot of people are definitely gonna take a lot from just listening to your journey. So thank you very much for coming in to share.
Thank you for having me. It's great to finally connect. And just the last thing is leadership is every day. So I love the name of this podcast. Appreciate you.
Thank you. This is Everyday Leadership. We will see you all next week.